Hi, my name is Alexis Richmond, and I'm going to talk about Joshua and the author of Joshua, Shirley, and Grau, and a little bit about her biography and what critics have to say about her writing, and a little bit about her works of writing and the style that she writes with. Shirley Ann Grau was born on July 8th, 1929, and her paternal grandfather migrated here from Prussia pre-Civil War, shortly before the Civil War, and then her maternal grandfather migrated here from Indiana, and he was of Scottish descent. But both of the grandmothers were French and Spanish, which gave Grau an ancestry that was Scottish, Louisiana Creole, and German. And then her and her family moved to Montgomery when she was in high school. They ended up leaving her senior year of high school and going back to New Orleans, where she graduated from Ursuline Academy uptown. And then she went on to Tulane University for college, and she graduated with a degree in English. And then she went on to graduate school at Tulane, but only stayed for a year because she found out that women were not allowed to be teaching assistants there, so she was kind of furious and left in a rage and just decided to write her fiction, and that's when she created her short stories and novels. Grau married James Spiegelman, who was a Tulane University philosophy professor in 1955, and together they had 5 children. And then they ended up splitting their time between Louisiana and Massachusetts, where they would spend summers in Martha's Vineyard, and then they would spend winters in New Orleans and in Metairie, the suburb of Metairie. And some of her interests consist of music, sailing, and duck hunting. These are just some of her novels and short stories that she wrote right after right after her 1 year of graduate school at Tulane. And her first short stories were published in a book called The Black Prince, and that's where Joshua was actually written in. And it got a lot of critical attention because it was kind of written at a time where discrimination and racism was still a main factor in the lives of many people in the South. And the fact that she was just even talking about blacks was kind of a big, not issue, but it was kind of a big thing at the time, because it wasn't really spoken about or written about yet, and racial relations were not really talked about much, so it was kind of risky, and she dared to be bold when she published that book. And a lot of the themes in that book also were kind of about the smaller person conquering over the larger person. Like, they kind of had a bigger influence over life than you would think of the larger person or the higher person on the higher level that you would think would. And then she published her first novel, The Hard Blue Sky. And then her second novel was The House on Coliseum Street, and they both took place in Louisiana. But they both kind of had a theme of the home and the failure of the home to provide direction to its members. In The Hard Blue Sky, Annie Landry leaves her home, and then in The House on Coliseum Street, Joan is locked out of her mother's home at the end of the novel. And also in The Black Prince for Joshua, the home is kind of a theme too, because he has a safe haven at the warehouse, which is kind of a broken down, like, ugly, horrible place, but it ends up being a safe haven for him because it's better than his real home. Like anything would be better than his real home, where his parents are constantly fighting and it's kind of disorderly, and it's just not a home that was traditional, like pre-modernism. And The Keepers of the House was also a novel she wrote later, and it won the Pulitzer Prize in 1964, and none of Grau's later works after The Keepers of the House ever got any awareness or critical awareness than The Keepers of the House did. Grau's writing styles and themes. All of her works contain strong thematic strains of the home, gender, race, and ethical concerns. These themes were primarily concerned with issues related to the American South, and she may have been a little bit ahead of her time because when she started writing black stories, like I said earlier, it wasn't really talked about or it wasn't really written about at the time, so publishers and editors didn't want them. But then it kind of flip-flopped in 1960s because that's all editors and publishers wanted for a novel, because it's kind of like readers were curious about it and it was such a struggling theme that was going on in real life at the time. And then one critic, D.T. Max, this is a quote from him, he applauded Grau's uncondescending view of the South's poor and black and white residents, and he kind of says that she's never sentimental and always maintains like sufficient distance from her characters where she can write with detachment from them, so she's not really biased or one-sided. And that's about it. Let's see. Oh, and the burden of home critic, family provides psychological and inharmonious place, which I kind of mentioned before. This is could be a potential picture of his home, and then this is the warehouse, and you can kind of tell that the warehouse is like broken down and ugly and it doesn't have any lights or anything, but he still finds harmony in a place like that over a home which should be somewhere orderly and somewhere you can go to be comfortable, but obviously he escapes to the warehouse where he finds more comfort. And this is kind of a recurring theme that you find in her stories and novels, where the character wants to escape their home or is inevitably escaping their home. Also, in Joshua, moral corruption in the family and home, that's kind of the recurring theme I said again, where the home is not orderly or traditional like it was in the olden days before this time. And these are just some quotes from critics. Attention to detail is a Grau hallmark in most of her stories. That's what she focuses on, detail, and she writes a lot of episodes that are very memorable. And Grau has been described as a fictional anthropologist for her authentic portraits of the people and atmosphere of the American South. Grau invents unforgettable episodes of boy removing the jacket from a decaying body in a swamp in Joshua. All of the stories have a delightful air of romance and mystery about them, reinforced by vivid description and dramatic situation. And these are just two pictures of Grau, her in her earlier life, and then her in her later life. And that's it. Thank you.